I found my son barely alive in a roadside ditch at 2 in the morning. The call came from a number I didn't recognize. A trucker passing through said he'd seen something that looked like a body off Route 9 near the old quarry access road. Gave me the coordinates because he knew the cops would take their time for someone found out there. Said he had a son too. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? I didn't wake Clara, didn't call an ambulance, just grabbed my keys and drove. The headlights found him about 30 yards off the road, collapsed against the drainage culvert like something forgotten. His face was smeared with mud, one arm bent unnaturally, his breathing shallow and visible in the October cold. I've worked construction for 30 years. I know what a fall looks like versus what a beating looks like. This was a beating. Liam. I knelt beside him, checking his pulse. Steady enough. Who did this? His eyes opened, barely. Swollen, nearly shut. Dad. I'm here. Who? He coughed, and a trace of red followed. It was my wife's father. I froze. He said, Liam's voice faltered. He said our family wasn't good enough for success, that I'd never measure up, that marrying me was Rose's greatest mistake. I stayed silent, pulled out my phone, and quietly made the call that would destroy Victor Halden's world. The ambulance took 19 minutes. I stayed with Liam the whole time, applying pressure to the worst cuts with my jacket, keeping him talking so he wouldn't slip under. He kept apologizing, kept saying he should have listened to me, should have seen it coming, should have known better than to think people like the Haldens would ever accept someone like us. Don't, I said. Save your strength. They had guys, Dad. 2 guys. They said it was a message, that if I didn't walk away from Rose quietly, next time I wouldn't wake up. You remember their faces? Yeah. Good. The paramedics arrived with questions I answered in clipped sentences. No, I didn't see what happened. Yes, he could identify his attackers. No, I didn't know why anyone would want to hurt him. All lies, of course, but useful ones. At the hospital, Clara met me in the waiting room. I'd called her from the ambulance. She sat down beside me, took my hand, and said nothing for a long time. We've been married 28 years. She knows when I'm thinking versus when I'm planning. This was planning. How bad? She finally asked. Broken ribs, dislocated shoulder, concussion. They're checking for internal bleeding. And? Victor Halden did this. Her expression didn't change. You're sure? Liam told me. Said Victor had him jumped by 2 guys. Told them to make it hurt, make it clear. Clara's jaw tightened. She's always been better at controlling her anger than I am. Channels it into something productive. Then we need to be smart about this. I know. If you go after him physically, I won't. She looked at me. Frank. I said I won't. I met her eyes. I'm going to destroy him another way. The way that'll hurt more. The way he'll never see coming. A doctor emerged to tell us Liam would be okay. Bruised kidney, but nothing ruptured. He'd be in pain for weeks, but he'd heal. They wanted to keep him overnight for observation. I went in to see him. He looked small in that hospital bed, hooked up to machines, face swollen purple. Not the confident young man who'd gotten married 2 years ago in that ridiculous ceremony at the Halden estate, where I'd been introduced as Frank, who does contracting work, and Clara as in school administration, like we were the help. Dad, Liam said when he saw me, I'm sorry. For what? For not listening. You tried to warn me about them. About her. I pulled a chair close. Tell me everything. From the beginning. So he did. Told me how Rose had been distant for months, how she'd started making comments about his clothes, his car, the way he talked, how she'd ask him not to mention certain things at dinner parties, like the fact that I'd been a foreman or that Clara worked in public schools. How Victor had pulled him aside 3 weeks ago and suggested, very politely, that perhaps the marriage had been a mistake. How Rose had stopped wearing her ring when they went out. "Last night," Liam said, "I confronted her, asked her straight if she wanted a divorce. She said yes, said her father had been right all along, that I was dragging down the family name. I got angry, started packing. Then Victor called, said he wanted to talk, smooth things over, maybe we could work something out, asked me to meet him at his office. And you went." "I went." Liam's voice dropped. "Stupid, I know, but I don't know what I thought, that maybe he'd be reasonable. Instead, 2 guys grabbed me in the parking garage. Victor watched, told them to teach me about respect, about knowing my place. I said nothing, just listened. They drove me out to the quarry road, beat me, left me there." Liam looked at me with those swollen eyes. "He said if I went to the cops, he'd bury me, that he has judges, lawyers, the whole city in his pocket. That I'm nobody, and he's Victor Halden, and nobody would believe me anyway." I stood up, patted his shoulder gently. "Get some rest. Dad, what are you going to do?" "What I should have done 2 years ago," I said. "Stop you from marrying into that family. It's too late for that. It's never too late to correct a mistake." I headed for the door, then stopped. "Liam?" "Yeah?" "You don't have to apologize for being fooled. You only apologize for staying that way." I left him there and went to find Clara. She was in the hallway on her phone, already working. "That's my wife. Give her a problem and she'll have a solution before you finish explaining it." "I've pulled Victor's business filings," she said without looking up. "His company's done 17 projects in the last 5 years. All city contracts. All suspiciously low bid. Payoffs? Or worse. I'm checking his subcontractors now." I leaned against the wall, watching her work. "If reputation's his kingdom, I'll burn it without touching a match." Clara glanced up, smiled that dangerous smile I fell in love with. "Truth's just a hammer, Frank. You've swung worse." We drove home as the sun came up. Didn't sleep. Instead, we sat at the kitchen table with Clara's laptop and my filing cabinet full of industry contacts, and we started building our case. Victor Halden had spent 30 years building an empire on the backs of workers he underpaid, contracts he manipulated, and a reputation he'd carefully cultivated. He thought his money and connections made him untouchable. He was about to learn what working hands could build and destroy. By Monday morning, I had a list. 17 names. Contractors, laborers, suppliers, people Victor had screwed over the years. Some owed money, some blacklisted for complaining about safety violations, some just ground down by the machinery of his operation until they gave up and moved on. I'd worked this city for 3 decades. I knew every foreman, every union rep, every guy who'd ever swung a hammer on a Halden project. I started making calls. "Tommy? Frank Reeves? Yeah, long time. Listen, you still pissed about that job Victor Halden stiffed you on? The school renovation? I thought so. You keep records? Good. I'm putting together something. Can't explain yet, but I need documentation. Invoices, emails, anything showing what he promised versus what he paid. Same conversation 17 times. By Wednesday, I had a storage box full of evidence. Unpaid overtime, safety violations swept under the rug, contracts that mysteriously changed after signing. One guy even had photos of structural issues Victor had ordered covered up rather than fixed. Clara organized it all, made spreadsheets, cross-referenced dates, found patterns. "Look at this," she said, pointing at her screen. "Every project he's done with the city has come in under budget, not a little under. Way under. 10, 15%. You know what that means? Corner cutting. Or worse. I pulled the bid specifications. He's promising premium materials and delivering garbage. The difference goes straight into his pocket." "Can you prove it?" "Not yet. But I know who can." She made a note. I have a friend in the building inspector's office. Owes me a favor. I'll see what she knows. While Clara worked the paper trail, I focused on the immediate problem. Rose. My daughter-in-law had married Liam for the same reason people climb mountains, because he was there, and it seemed like a good story to tell at parties. Young love, crossing class boundaries, very romantic. Except romance fades quickly when you realize your husband shops at ordinary stores and your friends joke about his father driving a pickup truck. She had humiliated him, made him feel ashamed of his roots, and when he'd finally had enough, she'd turned to her father, who handled the situation the way wealthy men often do, with control and the confidence that no one would challenge him. They were wrong about that. I pulled up the joint credit account I'd set up when they got married. It had been my wedding gift, $50,000 in available credit, co-signed to help them get started. Furniture, honeymoon, whatever they needed. Liam had been proud to have it. Rose had used it like her personal shopping fund. I called the bank. Yes, I'd like to close an account. Number 447288392261. That's right, immediately. No, there's no fraud. I'm the primary holder. My son's the authorized user. We're dissolving the account. Yes, I understand there's a balance. I'll transfer it to my personal account and settle it separately. Thank you. Click. It would take 24 hours for the cancellation to process. Friday night, Rose would try to use that card at whatever overpriced restaurant she'd planned, and it would decline. In front of her friends, in front of the waiter, she'd called marrying Liam an inconvenience. I'd show her what inconvenience really meant. Friday came. I spent the day at a job site, replacing rotted joists in a 19th century building downtown. Good, honest work. The kind Victor Halden wouldn't understand. Getting your hands dirty, fixing what's broken, rather than covering it up. My phone rang around 7. Mr. Reeves? This is Detective Walsh, City Police. I'm investigating an assault that occurred on Route 9 last week. Your son was the victim. I'd like to ask you some questions. I leaned against my truck. Happy to help, Detective. What do you need? Your son says he can identify his attackers. Says they were hired by his father-in-law, Victor Halden. That's a serious accusation. It is. You believe him? My son doesn't lie. A pause. Mr. Halden is a prominent businessman, well-connected. These kinds of accusations can be complicated. I'm sure they can be. Another pause. I'll be straight with you, Mr. Reeves. Unless your son can provide concrete evidence, witnesses, recordings, something substantial, this case is going nowhere. It's his word against a man with more lawyers than I have coffee cups. Understood. I'm sorry. I really am. But that's the reality. I thanked him and hung up. Wasn't surprised. Wasn't even angry. You don't get to my age without understanding how the world works. Justice isn't blind. It just pretends to be while it peeks at your bank account. That was fine. I didn't need the cops. Clara got home around 8, carrying Chinese takeout and a satisfied smile. My inspector friend came through, she said, spreading boxes on the table. Turns out Victor's been skating by on building codes for years. Nothing major enough to shut him down, but lots of little violations. Railings that don't meet height requirements. Electrical work that's not up to spec. Fire exits that are technically too narrow. How's he getting away with it? Same way everyone does. He knows who to call, who to pay off, who to pressure. But here's the thing. Those violations are all documented. Every inspector who's ever been on one of his sites has filed reports. They're in the system. Public record. I smiled. Just waiting for someone to pull them all together. Exactly. We ate in comfortable silence. I've always loved that about Clara. She doesn't need to fill space with chatter. We think together, work together, plan together. What happened with the credit line? She asked. Closed it this afternoon. Rose find out yet? As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Liam. Rose is freaking out. Her card declined at dinner. She's blaming me. This is going to get ugly. I showed Clara. She snorted. Good. I almost feel bad. Don't. She stood by while her father had Liam beaten. She doesn't get to play victim now. She was right. Still, there's a difference between justice and cruelty, and I've always tried to stay on the right side of that line. Tonight was about inconvenience, not destruction. Rose would be embarrassed. Her friends would whisper. She'd have to call Daddy for money like she always did. But it was just the opening move. The preview, as I'd told Clara. The real show was still coming. Saturday morning, 2 guys showed up at my shop. I was alone, sorting lumber deliveries, when a black SUV pulled up and they climbed out. Big guys, dressed too nice for a construction yard. The kind of guys who lift weights and think that makes them tough. I kept working. "Frank Reeves?" the bigger one said. "That's me. We need to talk." "I'm listening." "Mr. Halden would like you to understand something. Your son made some accusations. Serious accusations. False accusations." I set down the board I was holding, turned to face them. "That so?" "That's so. Mr. Halden is willing to overlook this misunderstanding. He knows your son was upset about the divorce. People say things when they're emotional, but continuing to spread lies about Mr. Halden's character would be unwise." "Unwise how?" The second guy stepped closer, trying to crowd me. "You seem like a smart man. You understand how things work. Sometimes accidents happen. Construction sites are dangerous places." I looked at him, really looked, memorized his face, the scar above his left eyebrow, the way his jacket didn't quite hide the gun under his arm. "You threatening me?" "We're advising you. For your own good." "I appreciate the advice." I pulled my phone from my pocket, checked the time. "You boys should go now." "We're not done." "Yeah, you are." I nodded toward the security camera mounted above the door, the one I'd installed last year after a break-in. "Everything you just said is on video, clear audio too, so unless you want your advice going straight to my lawyer, I suggest you get in your fancy truck and drive away." They looked at each other, looked at the camera. The bigger one's jaw tightened. "This isn't over," he said. "I certainly hope not." They left. I watched them go, then pulled the SD card from the camera and made 3 copies. One for Clara, one for my safety deposit box, one for my lawyer. Evidence, documentation, the foundation of everything I was building. They thought I'd scare easy. I scare quietly. Liam came by Sunday afternoon. Still moving slow, ribs wrapped tight under his shirt, but the swelling in his face had gone down enough that he looked almost normal. He sat at my kitchen table while Clara made coffee, and for a while nobody said anything. Finally, he spoke. "Rose wants me to sign a statement." "What kind of statement?" "Saying I lied about her father, that I was confused because of the concussion, or angry about the divorce, or making things up for attention. Her lawyer drafted it. Very official. Says if I sign it, they'll cover my medical bills and give me a settlement. Enough to buy a house. Start over. And if you don't sign? They'll sue me for defamation, destroy my reputation, make sure I never work anywhere decent again." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Victor's exact words, apparently, through his lawyer, of course. Clara set coffee in front of him. "You're not going to sign it." "No." "Good." Liam looked at me. "I should have listened to you. About all of it. About Rose, about her family, about what they really thought of us. You tried to warn me." "I did. I thought I could make it work, thought love was enough, or that if I just tried harder, proved myself, they'd accept me eventually." He wrapped his hands around the mug. "I was an idiot." "You were hopeful," I said. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yeah. Idiots don't learn. You did." He smiled a little at that. "So what now?" "Now?" I leaned back. "Now you heal. Go stay with your sister for a while if you need to. Stay here if you want. Wherever you feel safe. What about Victor? What about Rose?" "I'll handle it." "Dad?" "I said I'll handle it." Clara sat down. "We've been doing research. Victor's built his empire on bad contracts and worse ethics. It's all documented. We're going to pull it apart piece by piece until there's nothing left but rubble. Liam stared at her, then at me. You're serious? Very. He's Victor Halden. He has lawyers, connections, money. And we have the truth, I said, which turns out to be a pretty good weapon when you know how to use it. I don't want you getting hurt because of me. I reached across and held his shoulder. Listen to me. What happened to you wasn't your fault. Victor decided you weren't worthy of his so-called family. That makes this personal. No one hurts my son and walks away. But, no buts. This is happening. The only question is whether you're with us or not. We'll do it either way, but I'd rather have you on board. Liam looked between us. I could see him thinking, weighing options, trying to find an angle that didn't end with his family at war with one of the most powerful men in the city. There wasn't one. Okay, he finally said. What do you need me to do? Nothing yet. Just heal. When the time comes, I'll let you know. He nodded slowly. And Rose? What about her? She's going to get caught in this too, whatever you're planning. She made her choice, Clara said. She stood by while her father had you beaten. She's not innocent here. I know. He trailed off. I guess part of me still hopes she didn't know. That maybe Victor did this without telling her. I didn't say anything. No point crushing whatever hope he had left. But I'd met Rose plenty of times over the past 2 years. Watched how she looked at Liam when she thought nobody was paying attention. Saw the contempt she tried to hide behind polite smiles. She knew. Maybe not the specifics, but she knew her father was handling the problem of her unsuitable husband. And she'd let it happen. After Liam left, Clara and I sat on the back porch with beer and silence. The October sun was setting, painting everything orange and gold. Pretty, peaceful. The kind of evening that makes you forget the world can be ugly. You think we're doing the right thing? Clara asked. Does it matter? It does to me. I thought about it. Victor Halden hurt our son. Not because Liam did anything wrong, but because he decided Liam wasn't good enough. Wasn't the right class, the right background, the right type of person. He had him beaten and thrown in a ditch like garbage. I know. And when Liam survived, when he tried to tell the truth, Victor sent thugs to threaten us, to make sure we stayed quiet, stayed in our place. I looked at her. So yeah, I think we're doing the right thing. I think sometimes you have to break something to fix it. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I've got. She smiled, took my hand. Good enough for me. We sat there until the sun went down and the stars came out, planning our next move. Tomorrow, Victor would learn what working hands could build and destroy. The Halden Foundation annual charity gala was the social event of the season. Black tie, 200 guests, silent auction, the whole performance. Victor threw it every year to remind everyone how generous and civic-minded he was. Raised money for some vague children's literacy program that probably spent more on the party than actual books. I'd never been invited, wasn't expected to be, which is why nobody questioned the AV technician who showed up Thursday afternoon to check the sound system. I'd borrowed the uniform from a friend who actually did event production, wore a tool belt, carried a clipboard, looked busy. People don't see workers. They see the work, maybe, but the person doing it becomes invisible. Your furniture, background noise. I spent 2 hours testing microphones, adjusting speaker levels, making sure everything was perfect for tomorrow night. And in the process, I planted 3 wireless mics in strategic locations, one near the bar where Victor liked to hold court, one in the hallway outside the restrooms where people ducked away for private conversations, and one clipped inside the podium where he'd give his big speech. All 3 fed to a digital recorder in my truck. High quality, crystal clear. Clara had argued against it. Said audio surveillance was risky, potentially illegal, definitely something that could backfire if discovered. But I wasn't planning to use the recordings in court. I was planning to use them at the gala itself. And for that, I needed Victor, in his own words. Friday night arrived. The Riverside Hotel ballroom filled with the city's elite. Politicians, developers, lawyers, all the people who kept the machine running. I stayed away, sat in my truck 2 blocks over, monitoring the audio feed through headphones, waiting. Around 8, Victor's voice came through. He was at the bar talking to someone I didn't recognize. Frankly, I'm relieved the whole situation is resolving itself. The boy was never right for Rose. Decent enough kid, I suppose, but that family. Working class, no education, no prospects. Can you imagine what my grandchildren would have been like? Bit harsh, Victor. Harsh? I'm being realistic. There's a reason people stick to their own kind. Breeding matters. Culture matters. You can't just marry down and expect it to work out. Still, beating the kid was probably excessive. A pause. Then Victor laughed. I didn't beat anyone. I simply made sure he understood the situation. That marriage was a mistake. Everyone's better off now that it's ending. If you say so. I do. And between you and me, if he tries to make this messy, I'll bury him. One call and his life is over. That's the advantage of being Victor Halden. I don't have to fight. I just have to make a phone call. I stopped the recording, played it back, clear as day. Victor admitting to everything. Perfect. I waited until 9:30, when Victor was scheduled to give his speech. Watched the live stream on my phone. The gala was being broadcast for donors who couldn't attend. Saw him step up to the podium, microphone clipped to his lapel, that practiced smile on his face. He started talking, thanking everyone for coming, praising their generosity, spinning his usual lines about community and opportunity, and giving back. I logged into the hotel's audio system. I'd left a back door in the software when I was setting up, just a simple admin override that let me patch into the main feed. And then, right in the middle of Victor's speech about helping underprivileged children, I played the recording. His own voice, loud and clear over the ballroom speakers. The boy was never right for Rose. Working class, no education, no prospects. Can you imagine what my grandchildren would have been like? Victor stopped talking. His face went white. The recording continued. Breeding matters. Culture matters. You can't just marry down and expect it to work out. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People pulled out phones, started recording. If he tries to make this messy, I'll bury him. One call, and his life is over. Victor lunged for the podium's microphone, trying to shut it off, but the audio was coming from the main system. Nothing he could do would stop it. That's the advantage of being Victor Halden. I don't have to fight. I just have to make a phone call. The recording ended. Silence. 200 people staring at Victor Halden as he stood there, exposed, his carefully maintained mask shattered in front of everyone who mattered. Then the murmurs started, the whispers. Someone near the front stood up and walked out, then another, then 10 more. I watched on the phone screen as Victor tried to recover, tried to say something about context, about things being taken the wrong way. But his voice was shaking, his hands were shaking, the applause faded faster than his pride. I drove home and found Clara waiting up, showed her the video that was already spreading across social media. Victor's face, Victor's words, Victor's complete and total humiliation in front of the people he'd spent a lifetime impressing. Phase 1 complete, Clara said. Phase 1, I agreed. Tomorrow, we'd hit him where it really hurt, his wallet. The fallout from the gala started before sunrise. My phone lit up with news alerts. Local media had picked up the story, spinning it every way imaginable. Prominent developer caught in audio scandal. Halden's classist comments spark outrage. Charity gala ends in chaos. By Monday morning, Victor was in full damage control mode. He released a statement through his PR firm apologizing for his poor choice of words and insisting his comments had been taken out of context. Said he'd been drinking. Said he didn't really believe those things. Said he deeply respected people from all walks of life. Nobody bought it. Clara had been busy over the weekend. She'd compiled every piece of documentation we'd gathered. The unpaid invoices, the safety violations, the contract irregularities, and organized them into a comprehensive report. 30 pages of carefully cited evidence showing a pattern of corner-cutting, worker exploitation, and potential fraud. Then she sent it to every investor who'd put money into Victor's current development projects. I was at a job site Tuesday when the first call came. Dennis Calloway, an old friend who ran a mid-sized contracting firm and had worked as a subcontractor on 2 Halden projects. "Frank, what the hell is going on?" "Depends. What are you hearing?" "I'm hearing Victor's investors are pulling out. The bridge project, the downtown renovation, that big mixed-use development on 4th Street, all of them are suspending funding pending an investigation." "Investigation into what?" "His business practices. Somebody sent them a bunch of documents showing he's been cooking the books, that he's been billing for materials he never bought, using substandard suppliers, pocketing the difference." "Sounds serious." "It is serious. Without funding, those projects are finished. And if they're finished, Victor's company is finished. He's buried in debt. If he can't fulfill those contracts, the banks will start demanding repayment." "Shame," I said. Dennis paused. "Frank, this was you, wasn't it?" "I don't know what you're talking about. The audio at the gala, now this, you're going after him." "If I were going after him," I said slowly, "it would be because he had my son beaten and left in a ditch. And because when Liam tried to tell the truth, Victor sent thugs to my shop to threaten me. So if someone were going after him, they'd be completely justified." Dennis laughed. "Good for you. That man's always been contemptible. I hope he faces the consequences." "Appreciate that." By Wednesday, the damage was spreading. 3 of Victor's major investors had officially withdrawn. The city's planning commission announced they'd be reviewing all Halden contracts in light of recent concerns. The union representing construction workers released a statement saying they'd been documenting complaints about Victor's projects for years and were prepared to go public with testimony. Victor's empire was collapsing, not gone yet, but struggling for air. I didn't steal his empire. I just turned off its oxygen. Clara tracked the fallout like a general watching a battle unfold. She had a spreadsheet showing every project, every investor, every deadline. Knew exactly which dominoes would fall and when. "The 4th Street development is the key," she said. "It's his biggest project. $200 million in financing. If that collapses, everything else goes with it." "How long until it collapses?" "Investors have 30 days to decide whether to continue funding, but the timeline's tight. Construction's supposed to start in 6 weeks. If they pull out now, there's no time to find replacement financing. The whole thing falls apart." "And Victor?" "He's personally guaranteed the loans. If the project collapses, he's responsible for the entire amount. He wouldn't recover. He'd have to sell everything just to pay off the debt." I smiled. "You're scary sometimes, you know that?" "I'm precise. There's a difference." Thursday afternoon, Rose called Liam. He put her on speaker so I could hear. "This is your father's fault," she said without preamble. "What he did to my father at the gala, these lies he's spreading, it's destroying my family." "My father told the truth," Liam said. "That's different from lies. He humiliated us. Do you understand what that recording has done? My father's been disinvited from clubs. Friends won't return his calls. Business partners are walking away. You have to make him stop." "I don't have to make him do anything." "Liam, please. I know things ended badly between us, but you stood by while your father had me beaten." "That's not... I didn't know. My father said he was going to talk to you. I didn't know those men would... But you did know he hired them. You knew he wanted me hurt. You just didn't care enough to stop it. Silence on the line. Rose? Liam's voice was harder now, stronger. You called me low class, said marrying me was your biggest mistake, said my family embarrassed you, remember? I was angry. You were honest, and now you're dealing with the consequences. Don't call me again. He hung up. I looked at him. Proud of you. Thanks. He rubbed his face. Doesn't feel good, though. Doing the right thing usually doesn't. Not at first. By Friday, the cracks in Victor's foundation had become chasms. The 4th Street investors officially withdrew. The Planning Commission launched a formal investigation. 2 former employees came forward with allegations of workplace harassment. The media was circling like sharks, and Victor, for the first time in his life, had no control over the narrative. He tried, of course, gave an interview to the local paper saying he was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign. That disgruntled ex-workers and competitors were trying to destroy him out of jealousy, that he'd been nothing but fair and ethical his entire career. But the evidence kept piling up. Documents, photos, testimony, all of it painting a picture of a man who'd spent decades exploiting anyone he thought was beneath him. Saturday evening, I got a call from an unknown number. Mr. Reeves, this is Gerald Paxton. I represent Victor Halden. I know who you are. Mr. Halden would like to meet with you. Discuss a resolution to this situation. What situation? Please, Mr. Reeves. Let's not play games. My client understands you're upset about what happened to your son. He's prepared to make a substantial offer to settle this matter quietly. How substantial? $500,000, plus full medical coverage for your son, and a written apology. Tell him no. Mr. Reeves, tell him I'm not interested in his money. Tell him I want something else. What's that? I want him to understand what it's like to lose everything because someone decided he wasn't good enough. I hung up. Clara looked over from the couch. That was probably a bad idea. Probably. Victor's dangerous when he's cornered. Good, so am I. She smiled. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, I said. I don't crash his event, I headline it. Victor called Sunday night himself. Not his lawyer. Him. We need to talk, he said. Face to face. I'm listening. Not on the phone. Meet me tomorrow, noon, underground parking at my office building, level 3, come alone. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, things are going to get very ugly for your family. Your son's already destroyed. Your daughter works in PR, right? Evelyn? Be a shame if her firm suddenly lost some major clients. And your wife, school district accountant. Lots of ways that job could become difficult. My hand tightened on the phone. You threatening my family? I'm explaining reality. You started this war. I'm giving you a chance to end it before people get seriously hurt. Noon, level 3. Don't be late. He hung up. Clara was watching me. That was Victor. Yeah. What did he say? I told her. She went very still. You're not going, she said. I am. Frank. He threatened you. Threatened Evelyn. This stops now. Then we go to the police. Show them everything we have. And they'll do what? Take a report? Victor has more lawyers than they have detectives. No. I stood up. I'll meet him, but on my terms. What does that mean? It means I'm going to that parking garage, but not alone and not unprepared. I spent the rest of the night making arrangements. Called Dennis Calloway and 3 other guys I trusted. Explained the situation. They all agreed to help without hesitation. Victor had screwed them over at one point or another, and payback's a language everyone speaks. Monday morning, I drove to Victor's office building. 40 stories of glass and steel in the financial district. His name carved into the marble lobby. I parked on level 3 as instructed and walked to the designated spot. Victor was already there, leaning against a black Mercedes. Alone as far as I could see. But I knew better. Guy like him doesn't do anything without backup. You came, he said. You asked nicely. He didn't smile. This has gone on long enough. You've made your point. You've embarrassed me, cost me money, damaged my reputation. Congratulations. You win. I don't think I do. I'm offering you a way out. A good way out. $1 million, all medical expenses, a written apology. Your son can move on, rebuild his life. And you go back to your little contracting business, and we forget this ever happened. And if I say no, then I destroy you, not just you, your whole family. I'll sue your son for defamation. I'll make sure your wife's fired. I'll have your daughter blacklisted from every PR firm in the state. I'll tie you up in legal battles for the rest of your life. I looked at him. Really looked. He was sweating despite the cool air. His hands were clenched. The great Victor Halden reduced to making threats in a parking garage because his perfect world was crumbling. You had my son beaten, I said quietly. I had nothing to do with that. You had him attacked and left in a ditch because you decided he wasn't worthy of your family. That's not... And when he tried to tell the truth, you sent men to threaten me, to make sure I stayed quiet, stayed in my place. This is business, Reeves. Nothing personal. It's personal to me. I pulled out my phone, showed him the screen, a live feed showing Dennis and my 3 other friends positioned around the parking garage, cameras running, recording every word of our conversation. Victor's face went white. You've been talking about destroying my family, I said, making threats, all of it on video, all of it admissible in court. So here's my counteroffer. You go public tomorrow at your press conference. You admit what you did to Liam. You admit to the fraud, the safety violations, the exploitation. You accept responsibility. Or I release this video along with everything else we've compiled, and you spend the next decade fighting criminal charges instead of civil suits. You can't? I can. I already have. The question is whether you make it easy or hard. I stepped closer. You go public tomorrow, and maybe you survive this. Maybe you rebuild someday. But if you keep fighting, if you keep threatening my family, I'll make sure you lose everything. And I mean everything. This is extortion. This is justice. You just don't recognize it because usually you're the one holding the hammer. I turned to leave. Noon tomorrow. Your press conference. The whole truth. Or the video goes to every news outlet in the state. Reeves, we're done here. I walked away, got in my truck, drove home. Clara was waiting. How'd it go? He threatened to destroy us if we didn't back down. And? I told him to go public tomorrow or I'd destroy him first. I showed her the video footage. Dennis got everything. She watched, smiled. You're getting good at this. I had a good teacher. We spent the rest of the day finalizing everything for tomorrow. The evidence was already prepared. Clara had organized it into a comprehensive package for the media. All we needed was Victor to do what we knew he'd never do willingly, tell the truth. Which is why I had a backup plan. Tomorrow, I wasn't going to crash Victor's event. I was going to headline it. Tuesday morning broke cold and gray. The city's new 4th Street development was supposed to have its ribbon-cutting ceremony at 11. Big event. Politicians, investors, media, everyone who mattered. Victor was scheduled to give a speech, cut the ribbon, smile for cameras, pretend his world wasn't collapsing. I'd spent 3 days planning what came next. The ceremony was in a public plaza next to the construction site. Temporary stage, rows of chairs, the whole setup. I arrived at 9:30 dressed as facility maintenance. Borrowed uniform again, clipboard, radio. Blended right in with the setup crew. Nobody questioned me. I spent an hour checking sight lines, camera positions, escape routes. Everything had to be perfect. The timing had to be exact. One wrong move and Victor would spin this into his favor, play the victim, maybe even salvage something. I couldn't let that happen. At 10:30, people started arriving. I stayed out of sight, watching from behind a maintenance truck. Saw Rose climb out of a town car, looking polished and cold. Saw city officials glad-handing each other. Saw reporters setting up, ready to broadcast Victor's big moment of triumph. The irony was beautiful. At 10:45, Victor arrived, stepped out of his Mercedes wearing a $1,000 suit and a practiced smile, waving to people like he was running for office. He looked confident, in control, like the disaster of the past 2 weeks had been just a minor setback. He had no idea what was coming. Clara texted, "Everything ready?" "Ready," I replied. He didn't take the deal. "I know." "Good." At 11 sharp, the ceremony began. The master of ceremonies introduced various officials. They all gave bland speeches about progress and community, standard political nonsense. Finally, they introduced Victor. He took the stage to polite applause, started his speech, talked about vision and opportunity and investing in the city's future, made jokes, charmed the crowd. He was good at this, playing the role of benevolent developer, the man who made things happen. I let him talk for 3 minutes, let him feel safe. Then I triggered the first audio file. Victor's voice boomed through the PA system, interrupting his speech. The boy was never right for Rose. Working class, no education, no prospects. Victor stopped mid-sentence, looked confused, looked at the sound technician who was frantically checking equipment, but the voice kept playing. Breeding matters. Culture matters. You can't just marry down and expect it to work out. The crowd went silent. Phones came out. Cameras focused. If he tries to make this messy, I'll bury him. One call and his life is over. Victor grabbed the microphone. Someone's playing games. That's out of context. But I'd already cued the second audio file. His conversation with his lawyer from yesterday's parking garage. I don't care about apologies. I want him crushed. Him and his whole family. Make it hurt. Gasps rippled through the audience. Victor's face flushed red. Turn that off. Turn it off. The audio cut off. For a moment, the room was completely silent. Every eye fixed on Victor, every camera still recording. Then Rose stood up, walked to the stage, took the microphone from her father. "My husband's been unstable," she said, voice shaking. "He's been making accusations, spreading lies about my father because our marriage fell apart. You have to understand, he's not thinking clearly." I stepped out from behind the truck, walked toward the stage. "That's interesting," I said loudly, "because I have a recording that tells a different story." All heads turned. Victor saw me and went pale. I took out my phone and played the last recording. Liam's voice, captured in the hospital the night I found him. It was my wife's father. He said our family wasn't good enough for success. That I'd never be good enough. That marrying me was Rose's biggest mistake. Then he had 2 men beat me and leave me in a ditch. The shockwave was immediate. Reporters surged forward. Officials started muttering. Rose's face crumpled. Victor lunged off the stage toward me. "You son of a—" He didn't finish. Couldn't. His foot caught on the bottom step, and he went down hard, crashing into the metal railing. Cameras flashed. He struggled to get up, but his knee buckled. Sprawled on the concrete like garbage, the great Victor Halden, reduced to nothing in front of everyone. I walked past him, climbed onto the stage, looked out at the crowd. "My name is Frank Reeves," I said into the microphone. "Victor Halden had my son attacked because he decided we weren't worthy of his family. When we tried to tell the truth, he threatened us, tried to silence us, tried to use his money and power to make us disappear." I paused. Let it sink in. But here's what men like Victor forget. The truth doesn't care about money. It doesn't care about power or influence or social status. The truth just is, and today, everyone gets to hear it. I pulled a USB drive from my pocket, held it up. This drive contains everything. Documents showing years of fraud, safety violations, exploitation, testimony from workers he cheated, photos of structural issues he covered up. All of it verified, documented, ready for investigation. I looked at the reporters. "I'm giving this to the media, all of it. Public record. Let the courts decide what happens next." Victor was being helped to his feet by security. His face was a mask of rage and fear. "You're finished," he snarled at me. "No," I said. "You are." I walked over to the ceremonial ribbon stretched across the entrance to the construction site. The oversized scissors were on a table nearby, part of the photo op Victor had planned. I picked them up, looked straight at Victor, cut the ribbon. "Consider this," I said, "the grand opening of your downfall." The ribbon fell, cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, officials scrambled, and Victor Halden, the untouchable developer, the man who thought his money could buy anything, collapsed against his daughter, broken and exposed in front of the whole city. I handed the USB drive to the nearest reporter. Then I walked off the stage, through the chaos, past the stunned crowd, and back to my truck where Clara was waiting. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Perfect," I said. We drove away as the sirens started in the distance. The media firestorm was immediate and total. By Tuesday afternoon, every news outlet in the state was running the story. Videos of Victor's collapse went viral. His recorded admissions played on repeat. Reporters dug through the documents I'd released, finding new angles, new victims, new evidence of systemic corruption. By Wednesday, the city's district attorney announced a criminal investigation. By Thursday, Victor's company had filed for bankruptcy protection. By Friday, he'd been arrested on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and assault. I watched it all unfold from my living room, drinking coffee, feeling nothing but satisfaction. Clara sat beside me, tracking everything on her laptop, making sure every detail landed exactly where it needed to. "The DA's office called," she said. "They want you to testify to the grand jury." "When?" "Next month. They're building a RICO case, organized fraud spanning multiple projects over 15 years. He'll go to prison. If they can make it stick, yeah, 20 years minimum." I nodded. "Good." Liam came by Saturday morning. He looked better, moving easier, color back in his face, some of the weight lifted from his shoulders. "You did it," he said. "We did it." "No, Dad. This was you." He sat down across from me. "I keep thinking about that night in the ditch, how cold it was, and how certain I was that I wouldn't make it. And I remember thinking that if I survived, I'd spend the rest of my life ashamed. That Victor was right, that I wasn't good enough, that I'd failed somehow. You didn't fail. I know that now, because you showed me what real strength looks like. Not money or power or connections, just truth. Just standing up and saying this is wrong and not backing down until something changes." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just gripped his shoulder. "Rose called me yesterday," Liam continued. "She's asking for a divorce. Quick and quiet, no media, just sign the papers and disappear." "You going to?" "Yeah. There's nothing left there. Maybe there never was." He smiled a little. "I'm thinking about moving back here for a while. Get my head straight. Figure out what I actually want, instead of what I thought I should want." "Your room's still empty." "Thanks, Dad." After he left, I went out to my shop. Had work to catch up on, a renovation project that was behind schedule, materials to order, crews to coordinate, the normal business of life, the kind of work that doesn't make headlines or destroy empires, just keeps the world running. It felt good to get back to it. Clara found me around noon, bringing sandwiches and news. "Rose is cooperating with prosecutors," she said. "She's giving them everything she knows about Victor's business operations, trying to save herself. Think it'll work? Depends on how deep she was in it. If she knew about the fraud, she's going to prison too. If she was just willfully ignorant, maybe she skates with probation. And Victor? He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Even if he escapes some of the charges, there's too much evidence, too many witnesses now that they're no longer afraid." She took a bite of her sandwich. "You ended him." "He destroyed himself. I just pulled back the curtain." "Modest. Honest." She smiled at that. We ate in comfortable silence, surrounded by tools and lumber and the smell of sawdust. My world. The one I'd built with my own hands. The one nobody could take away. That evening, I got a call from Dennis. "Frank, you need to see this." "See what?" "Check the news, Channel 7. I turned on the TV. A press conference was happening. The district attorney stood at a podium, flanked by city officials and law enforcement. "Thanks to evidence provided by private citizens, we've uncovered a widespread pattern of corruption involving multiple city contracts. Victor Halden and his associates have been charged with 19 counts of fraud, 8 counts of conspiracy, and 3 counts of assault. We expect additional charges as the investigation continues." The camera cut to reporters shouting questions. "Is this the biggest corruption case in the city's history?" "Based on the dollar amounts involved, yes. We're talking about millions of dollars in fraudulent billing, safety violations that endangered workers, and a systematic exploitation of the city's contracting process." "Were you aware of these issues before this week?" "We had suspicions. But without concrete evidence, our hands were tied. The documentation that came to light this week changed everything." "Do you know who provided that documentation?" The DA paused, smiled slightly. "Let's just say some concerned citizens decided enough was enough." Dennis was laughing when I called him back. "Concerned citizens. That's you." "That's us," I said. "Couldn't have done it without your help. Frank, you gave half the working guys in this city hope. Victor's been screwing people over for decades, and everyone just took it because they figured that's how the world works. You proved it doesn't have to be that way. I just got angry. You got even. There's a difference." Monday morning, I drove past the 4th Street development site. The construction fence was covered in notices, foreclosure warnings, contractor liens, stop work orders. The grand vision Victor had sold was just empty concrete and steel now, waiting for someone else to claim the scraps. I didn't feel bad about it. The workers he'd cheated were already filing claims in bankruptcy court. Clara had helped several of them organize, making sure they had documentation, knew their rights, understood the process. They wouldn't get everything they were owed, but they'd get something. More importantly, they'd get acknowledgement that they'd been wronged. That mattered. By Tuesday, Rose had moved out of the Halden estate, moved in with friends, according to Liam. She was cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for immunity, testifying against her father. The tabloids were eating it up, the ice princess, betraying the king. I felt nothing about it either way. She'd made her choices. Now she was living with them. Wednesday brought vindication of a different kind. The City Planning Commission released a report recommending a complete overhaul of the contracting system. New oversight, stronger enforcement, criminal penalties for violations. They specifically cited the Halden case as an example of what happens when corruption goes unchecked. Clara read the report and laughed. "They're taking credit for your work. Let them. As long as the system changes, I don't care who gets credit. You're a better person than I am. You already knew that." Thursday, the union representing construction workers held a press conference. They announced new safety protocols and a whistleblower protection system for reporting violations. The head of the union mentioned my name specifically, called me an example of what one person could do when they refused to accept injustice. It was embarrassing and satisfying in equal measure. Friday night, Clara and I took Liam out to dinner. Not anywhere fancy, just a local steakhouse we'd been going to for 20 years. Good food, good company, no pretense. "To justice," Liam said, raising his glass. "To family," I countered. "To both," Clara said, and we drank. Liam looked different now, lighter somehow, despite everything he'd been through. "I've been thinking about going back to school," he said. "Maybe getting a degree in structural engineering. Actually learn to build things properly, not just put up with other people's bad work." "That's good," I said. "You'd be good at it. Learn from the best." He smiled. Dad, I know I already said this, but thank you. For everything. For not letting them win. For showing me that class isn't about money or background or any of that garbage. It's about integrity. You always knew that. You just forgot for a while. Yeah, well, I remember now. We ate, talked about normal things, sports, weather, upcoming projects. It felt good to be normal again, to not be planning revenge or gathering evidence or fighting battles, just being a family, eating dinner, enjoying the moment. Later, driving home with Clara, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. You happy? Clara asked. Yeah. You? Very. She took my hand. You know what the best part is? We didn't break any laws, didn't hurt anyone who didn't deserve it, just told the truth and let the consequences happen naturally. That's what I wanted. Clean revenge, the kind where you can look yourself in the mirror after. Mission accomplished. Saturday morning, I went to my shop early, had a job starting Monday, restoring the facade on a historic building downtown. Good work. Honest work. The kind that'll still be standing 100 years from now. As I was sorting materials, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Reeves, this is Julia Mathis from the City Council. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did. Victor Halden's corruption has been an open secret for years, but nobody had the courage to challenge him. You did, and it's making a real difference. Just did what needed doing. Well, we'd like to honor you at next month's council meeting, present you with a citizen's commendation, recognize your service to the community. I almost laughed. I appreciate the thought, but I'll pass. Are you sure? This is a significant honor. I'm sure. What I did for my son, for my family, not for recognition. I understand, but Mr. Reeves, you should know, people are talking about you, about what one person can do when they decide to stand up. That's worth something. Maybe, but I'm just a contractor. I fix things, that's all. She thanked me again and hung up. I went back to sorting lumber, smiling to myself. Sunday, the final piece fell into place. Victor Halden's trial date was set, 6 months out. The DA was confident, multiple witnesses, overwhelming evidence. Victor's legal team was already negotiating a plea deal, but the DA wasn't interested. This was going to trial. Full public exposure, complete accountability. I didn't plan to attend. Didn't need to. The victory was already won. That evening, sitting on my back porch with Clara and a beer, watching the sun set over the city, I felt something I hadn't expected. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, not celebration, just satisfaction, the deep kind that comes from knowing you did the right thing the right way. You know what I keep thinking about? Clara said. That night you found Liam in the ditch. How cold it was. How scared I was when you called. How certain I was that nothing good would come from any of this. And now? Now I think maybe this is how the world is supposed to work. Good people standing up, truth winning out, justice actually happening. It doesn't usually work that way. No, but it did this time. Because of you. I shook my head. Because of us. All of us. You, Liam, Dennis, everyone who helped. Nobody does this alone. True. But somebody has to be willing to swing the first hammer. Truth's just a hammer, I said, echoing her words from weeks ago. I've swung worse. She smiled, leaned against me. We sat there until the stars came out, not talking, just being, together, victorious. Not because we'd destroyed Victor Halden, but because we'd shown that people like us, working class, blue collar, the so-called low-born, could stand up to power and prevail. That mattered more than anything. The day of Victor Halden's ribbon-cutting ceremony arrived with perfect irony, the event he'd planned as his triumphant return, his proof that he was still relevant despite the scandals, instead became his final public humiliation. I arrived early, blending in with the setup crew like I'd planned. The plaza was decorated, banners, flowers, a temporary stage. Politicians were already mingling, pretending they hadn't spent the last month distancing themselves from Victor. Reporters lined up with cameras, the whole circus. Victor showed up at 10:45, stepping out of his Mercedes in an expensive suit, playing the role one last time. He didn't see me watching from behind the maintenance truck, didn't know what was coming. The ceremony began right on schedule. Speeches from city officials, all carefully scripted to acknowledge the difficult period while focusing on moving forward. Safe, political nonsense. Then they introduced Victor. He took the microphone, started his prepared remarks about redemption and second chances, about how he'd learned from his mistakes and was committed to making things right. I let him talk for exactly 3 minutes. Then I triggered the audio. His own voice boomed through the speakers, interrupting his redemption speech. The boy was never right for Rose. Working class, no education, no prospects. Can you imagine what my grandchildren would have been like? Victor stopped mid-word. The crowd went silent. The recording continued. Every damning word, every elitist comment, every threat he'd made in that parking garage. I watched his face change as the reality hit. This wasn't a technical glitch. This was deliberate. This was calculated. This was me. Rose jumped up, tried to take control, spin the narrative, but I was already moving, walking toward the stage with my phone, playing Liam's recorded confession for everyone to hear. The truth, raw and undeniable. Victor saw me. Our eyes met across the plaza. I saw the moment he understood. This was always how it was going to end. With him exposed, humiliated, destroyed in front of everyone who'd ever mattered to him. He lunged off the stage toward me, rage overwhelming whatever self-preservation he had left. But his foot caught. He went down hard, sprawling on the concrete, the great Victor Halden reduced to nothing, while cameras captured every second. I climbed onto the stage, took the microphone, told them everything. Who I was, what he'd done, why it mattered. The words came easy because they were true. No spin, no manipulation, just facts. Then I picked up those oversized ceremonial scissors, the ones meant for Victor's photo op, his moment of glory. I walked to the ribbon stretched across the construction site entrance, looked straight at him where he lay broken on the ground, and I cut it. One clean slice. The ribbon fell away. Consider this, I said into the cameras, into the microphones, into history, the grand opening of your downfall. The plaza erupted, reporters surging forward, officials scrambling, security trying to figure out what to do, and Victor Halden, the man who'd spent his life believing money could buy anything, collapsed against his daughter, finished. I handed the USB drive with all the evidence to the nearest reporter. Walked off the stage, through the chaos, past the stunned crowd, back to my truck. Clara was waiting, just like we'd planned. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it. Thought about Liam in that ditch. Thought about the weeks of planning, the careful documentation, the precise execution. Thought about Victor's face as he realized he'd lost everything. "Satisfied," I said. He tried to ruin my son because he believed we weren't worthy. Thought we were beneath him. Thought money could shield him from consequences. And now? Now everyone knows the truth. That's all I wanted. Clara started the engine. "Where to?" "Home. I've got a renovation project starting tomorrow. Good, honest work." "Back to normal?" "Back to normal." We drove away as the sirens started. Police, probably, media vans, the machinery of justice finally grinding forward. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I'd done what I set out to do. As we passed the plaza, I glanced back one last time. Saw Victor being helped into an ambulance, reporters still shouting questions, officials trying to control the narrative. The great Halden empire burning down in real time. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt victorious. Not because I'd brought him down, though I had, but because I'd proven something greater. That truth outweighs wealth, integrity surpasses influence, and people from the working class are every bit as worthy as anyone else. Victor Halden had tried to teach my son that some people are simply better than others, that class and breeding determine worth. I'd taught him something different, that respect isn't inherited, it's earned, and when you lose it, no amount of money can buy it back. Clara reached over and squeezed my hand. Proud of you. Couldn't have done it without you. I know, but you swung the hammer. That takes something special. Just took being angry enough. No, she said. It took being brave enough. There's a difference. We drove home in comfortable silence. The sun was setting, painting the city in orange and gold, beautiful, peaceful, the kind of evening that makes you grateful to be alive. Tomorrow, the media would still be covering the story. Victor's trial would move forward. Justice would grind on, slow but inevitable. But tonight, I was simply Frank Reeves, contractor, father, husband, a man who had stood up to power and prevailed, not with wealth, force, or influence, but with truth, strategy, and the unshakable belief that some things are worth defending. My son was safe. My family was whole. And Victor Halden, the man who'd thought he was untouchable, had learned the hardest lesson of all, that gravity never forgets, and eventually, everyone falls. I'd cut his ribbon. I'd opened his world to scrutiny, and I'd walked away clean. Victory tastes different than I expected. Not sweet, exactly. Not triumphant. Just right. Like finishing a hard job and knowing you did it well, built it to last, left something good behind. That's enough. That's everything.